With your vote in this election, Joe Biden's country, for a short period of time, hopefully just a short period of time, it ends on November 5th, 2024. We have to take our country back.
Welcome back to America Decides. That was former President Trump rallying voters in South Dakota, where he picked up the endorsement of Governor Kristi Noem. Meanwhile, CBS News has learned the former president is requesting through his lawyers that federal judge overseeing his election interference case be recused. Trump's lawyers are arguing that Judge Tanya Chutkan's statements made in the sentencing of other January 6th defendants raise questions about her impartiality. To talk about this and other political news, Joel Payne and Hogan Gidley join us now. Joel is a CBS News political contributor, Democratic strategist, and chief communications officer for Move On. Hogan served as White House deputy press secretary in the Trump administration. He also served as national press secretary for Trump's 2020 re-election campaign. Hogan, let me start with you. This is somewhat late-breaking news this afternoon. The Trump lawyer requests that Judge Tanya Chutkan be removed. Your reaction?
I think there'll be a lot of maneuvers by both sides to try and get this thing over and done with the way they want it over and done with, if that makes any sense.
Prosecutors and defendants typically have a different definition of that.
Absolutely correct. I think one of the people I focus on in these instances is someone I worked with on impeachment really closely, and that's Alan Dershowitz. And one of the things he points to consistently is venue here is a problem for Donald Trump. You're talking about Atlanta. You're talking about Washington, D.C., a place.
In this case, it's about Tanya Chutkan, which is D.C.
I understand that. And 95% of the people here voted for Joe Biden, so he feels like that's a problem, too. And so when you take a look at New York, issues with the potential voter or the pool for jurors, if you will. So I'm looking at it writ large. But in this particular instance, it appears as though Donald Trump is going to try and hang around this case, some issues that the judge has said in the past when she obviously went after some of the J6 folks. So it makes sense they're going to try and do this. I expect this is the beginning of these type of political maneuvers.
Many more legal maneuvers to come,
Absolutely.
is your perspective. Joel,
Absolutely.
as you well know, the prosecution in this case, the special counsel Jack Smith's office, has raised with Judge Chutkan a couple of times now that things that former President Trump has said on social media might be prejudicial to the jury pool, might in fact do something to the way this case is heard, injurious to a fair trial. So it's not just one side on this particular ledger.
Yeah, look, I feel like the whole theory here that President Trump and his associates are trying to go for is just a delay. Delay helps them in every way. One, it allows them to own more of the news cycle and more of the airspace here in D.C., but also it just allows them to delay the inevitability of having to deal with the trial. It doesn't seem like he's going to be successful with his attempts to change venue and to change the atmospherics around this trial. And it seems like at some point he's going to have to face justice in Judge Chutkan's courtroom.
Back to the weekend, Kristi Noem, governor of South Dakota, endorsed the former president. There was signage there that said Trump Noem. Is that indicative of anything, Hogan?
Not to my knowledge. Obviously, I don't work for the former president now, but she is obviously an attractive candidate.
Do you think she is someone that the inner circle is considering seriously if he becomes the nominee as a running mate?
Again, I've not spoken to the inner circle about this, but I think it would be foolish not to consider someone like Kristi Noem.
Why?
I think she's a very effective messenger. Obviously, I think Donald Trump having someone like her on the ticket, a female from a Midwestern area of the country, would be good for him.
High Plains is probably more accurate.
High Plains, sure, but would be good for him too. And and we'll have to, if he does select Kristi Noem, then we can start talking about her arms and not Michelle Obama's anymore. She had them on full display.
Meaning
Very
guns.
important. Oh, yeah, yeah. So there you go. Eat your heart out, Michelle.
Not actual firearms, just,
Yeah,
biceps.
just your
That's all
arms.
we're talking. Joel Payne, I want to play for you something that New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu said over the weekend about the GOP field and former President Trump. Let's take a quick listen to that.
The fact that the former President Trump is a former president, the leader of the party, and he doesn't even really have 50% of the Republican base support tells you there's a real problem there. That's actually an incredibly low number. So you have all these other candidates out there, 8 of them at this point. That field's going to keep winnowing down, I think, as we've talked about a lot. If it gets to one-on-one, Trump and another candidate, that other candidate is undoubtedly going to beat him.
So, Joel, this sort of reminds those of us who've been around the block of the perpetual Republican fantasy about the one-on-one against former President Trump. Hasn't happened yet, isn't happening now, but evaluate what Governor Sununu said?
Well, I don't know who's going to win the Sununu primary. That's been one of my favorite things to watch from the sidelines here in D.C. I actually think the point that he's making is a good one about a one-on-one race. But when does that one-on-one race emerge? It's one thing for it to emerge now. It's another thing for it to emerge in December or in January or in February when President Trump theoretically has already built up all the momentum towards winning the nomination and locking it down again. So I think the sooner the better. Just talking to Hogan, not that I am going to be casting my lot with any Republicans, but if I was a Republican, if I was a never Trumper or a mainstream Republican, I'd think about someone like a Nikki Haley who I could get behind now, start pushing folks out of the race. She's shown that she's got upward trajectory in the race. I'm wondering if you're going to start to see mainstream Republicans start to make that type of calculus.
Just the last part of what Governor Sununu said. If it's one-on-one, the other candidate undoubtedly is going to beat Trump. Do you even believe that?
No,
Hogan
he's wrong.
Gidley?
In fact, a lot of polling shows the exact opposite. Trump still wins. It'd be a little bit closer because there wouldn't be a field that was kind of split, if you will, the way it is with so many candidates. But the fact is, Donald Trump still is the voice of the Republican Party. He still is a former president. And while we've seen in years past people kind of shoot up in Iowa and New Hampshire, look, I work for Santorum and Huckabee, both of whom were at 1%. So the people low in the polls don't bother me. But this is unique because you have a former president, an America First president, who has a record to run on. And I think a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, we want him to have that second term we feel like he deserved. I don't care if it's a one-on-one race or if it's a one-on-10-person race.
Just really quickly, we've still never seen that one-on-one Trump versus anti-Trump in a sitting.
That's true.
We've seen versions of it. We've seen a plurality of Trump. But we've never
That's
seen
true.
that. I think that's what Sununu's
I want to
pointing
show you two fine gentlemen something in our CBS News polling over the weekend. Americans in politics disagree on almost everything. Here's one thing. We found one thing that most Americans of both parties agree on. Concerns about elected officials over age of 75. Let's pull up the number, the polling data. 80% believe they could be out of touch. 78% believe that they would have a hard time living up to the rigors of the job. So what do you think, Joel, about this idea that we are getting as a country a little less comfortable with seniority as applied to anyone over 75, which would fit Biden and Trump?
I call this the if I had my druthers primary. Okay, so if I had my druthers, would I prefer that all of our leaders not average in the upper 70s, 80s? Sure, not because of ageism, but because I think having fresh perspective, fresh ideas is important. That said, Joe Biden has not done anything, has not performed in a way that would suggest that his age is affecting his performance. You look at a Mitch McConnell, it does seem like his age is starting to affect his performance. A Dianne Feinstein, it is affecting her performance. Joe Biden is not. So I don't think all of these scenarios are all one and the same.
Hogan, you are a one-liner machine. You got 20 seconds.
Well, I don't know what president you're watching, but Joe Biden consistently can't get through press conferences when he has the reporters in front of him, the questions in front of him, the answers in front of him, and a lot of times with a teleprompter, he stumbles, he stutters. It's not his age, it's his cognitive ability, it's his physical ability that people see and realize it's in steep decline.
Hogan Gidley, you get the last word. You'll be back at this table yet again, I'm sure. We'll continue the conversation also with Joel Payne. Thanks so very much.